What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. Me and the Cuzzo today. Ruben's a little busy, but that's okay. Christian, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm wearing a pink shirt, but just wanted to clarify I did not watch Barbie today. Just a pink Arc'teryx shirt
Ooh, that's a heavy
in case.
flex. Probably fetch a nice little resale dollar on that.
Oh yes, oh yes. How are
No,
you?
I'm good. You know, we just had family from Chicago come recently. It was really nice to see them. And yeah, even though that was Chicago, that's the Eastern Conference. We'll be mainly talking about the Western Conference today. The next two episodes are kind of be a little bit of a conference preview. Nothing crazy, but you know, for the most part, a lot of the free agents have signed outside of guys like again Christian Wood, Kelly Oubre. But for the most part, a lot of these rosters are finally shaping up to what they're going to be on opening night. So we're going to get into that. But even though we're talking about the Western Conference, we got to talk about it. Jaylen Brown got a crazy bag. 5 years, 303 million. Christian as the resident by association Celtics fan because you love the light skin god and Jason Tatum. How are you feeling about this extension?
I mean, I think it's like something that's like of Celtics nature in a sense. Like, I know people are pretty hard on the Celtics about being like a business first team that like either, abandons players or commits to their players completely. I think it's one or the other for them, and I think it's just a case where like I think it was just a straight up business move, Like I think they know that Jaylen Brown is part of their future and a part of like a successful future. So if there's anyone to really sign for that type of money, he's definitely worth that money, I'd say. Like I think he would fetch that money elsewhere, obviously.
You
Um,
think 300 M's for a guy who had like
well,
8 turnovers in a game seven?
look, I'm not the biggest fan of Jaylen Brown. I don't think that's what I'm saying, but I think you have to pay him the money, or you just like or you mess up like your future, at this point. Like
Yeah.
I think they figure out, obviously if the experiment goes wrong for this season and the next season, maybe they finally pull the trigger and, find a team that has 300 million worth of players to trade for. But I don't know. I think they just have to sign him because you can't let someone like him honestly walk. He's kind of like on the borderline of what I would think you would consider a young superstar, right? So
Mm.
but I wouldn't say he's there. Don't get me wrong. He definitely has flaws in his game. He maybe is a little overpaid, but he is one of those players you have to sign for that money. That's how I see it.
I feel like a lot of that though has to do with like the CBA and this whole supermax era we're in now. Because I mean, back in the day, I mean, they had stuff like that, but it wasn't as crazy as it is now. Because I mean, the Supermax was really designed for more like the hometown teams or like the small market teams to keep their guys, and you know,
Yeah.
we're seeing now. Can you guess how much Jaylen Brown is going to get paid in the last year of this contract? It's like a
Well, 300.
crazy amount.
So he's. I guess he's not guaranteed 300 M's, is
This
he?
is this
Or
is if it was all guaranteed. So it's 303 across 5 seasons.
plus 5 seasons. So quick math, that's like 60 mil a season.
Mm.
But I think, but I think he. I'm guessing he has to have some sort of eligibility through like all NBA teams and stuff like that.
The
Or
numbers I'm looking at doesn't include potential add-ons.
oh, okay.
So it's just
I
straight
I'm
money.
I'm guessing like his last season could be worth something like $100 million.
Mm,
Maybe
you're,
the math isn't adding up there, but
nah. Oh, I get where you're heading at, but nah. So he starts getting paid next season's what 2023, 2024. So after that season, he gets paid 52, and then in
okay,
2008, 2029 or 2028, holy, he's gonna be getting paid $69 million.
okay. I was honestly ballparking 80 before, and I think I was just like trying to add up like how the money might add up,
Hmm.
basically.
But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about just in terms of player retention, I agree that you kind of had no other choice than to give him the super max because otherwise there's no reason for him to stay outside of maybe running it back and all that. But I also think this is the Celtics last year to have like a chance with this core of guys before you kind of start retooling. Not to say you move on from the Jays, but you know, KP is obviously it's I can see them extending him, but it does for at this point in time feel like a little bit of a rental. And then if it doesn't work out this year, you're gonna have to look at getting off of guys like maybe Robert Williams to really get some extra value. And then Al
Yeah,
Horford's probably not going to be on this team for that much longer. So, I think it was necessary, but it's really I think pigeonholed them for the next few years. Because I mean, if this is how much he's making, imagine how much. Well, Jason Tatum I think signed another like super max like not too long ago. So I could be talking about my ass, but next time they got to pay him, whew, gonna be crazy. But I don't know. I feel like the super max is a very it's thrown around too often to the point where it's like the last few guys that have all gotten it have all been I don't want to use the word unworthy because they put the work in and all that, but they don't scream like a super max kind of guy like Bradley Beal. I mean,
no,
we saw how that turned out. Rudy Gobert, we all kind of know
no.
how that's going, and hopefully Jalen Brown's not a part of like this kind of pattern we're seeing. But yeah, I mean, the money is crazy. I mean, it is crazy, but just on off topic, did you see how much? Have you been paying attention to like how in football slash soccer, like the Saudi league starting to buy up a lot of the European guys,
Oh, fuck yeah! Like with Mbappe being
bro?
given like 1 billion 1 year offer, bro. Like,
Something
wasn't
like
it some
that.
with like I think it was because of the transfer fee and how much you would actually make from it. It
I
was
think
like,
it's like
it,
1.5 in total.
yeah, yeah, that's fucked.
That's
Like,
insane. If
yeah.
would you do it for your Mbappe?
Honestly, if you want to be like leave a legacy, because I think that's what football is about, like compared to like obviously other sports have legacies, but I think football's so traditional that like
I feel like football
even
is a lot more important, like
yeah,
having the personal accolades rather than
yes,
just
like
being a member of a team.
yeah, because you won't really. I think if he does that, he just kind of signs his like legacy away basically at that point.
But it is
And
just
I
for a
think
year, just to get it back.
yeah, I guess, but I think there's just like I think that's just like signing your life away in my opinion. He's got enough money, at that point, like what kind of money is like $1 billion? That's just like stupid
I
money,
mean, even the
like
money he was already getting at PSG, along with like an insane level of control at the club level, was insane. Because like I don't know if you heard, but I forgot how much he was getting paid, but he also got to like determine the transfers.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, not to go off topic because we're obviously talking about soccer right now and not fucking basketball,
Yeah.
but like he's wanted to play for Real Madrid for like since he was a kid, and like you look at like the type of legacy that like that team has with players like obviously Ronaldo and
Mhm.
David Beckham and now Kareem Benzema and like all these legends. Like, why would you? It's like basically like Michael Jordan, like if you were to be offered in like 1996, like during his prime, like to go to China for like $1 billion or something,
Mm,
like
that's
that's
a
basically
that's a good
like
comparison.
yeah, it's not the right move,
True.
for the culture at least.
Yeah. All this is just to say that the amount of money that's being thrown around nowadays is insane. But
Yep.
anyways, let's get right into the actual meat of the show. So, as we said, this is a bit of a Western Conference preview. We're not going to go just like team by team by team. We're going to start here. Top six in the West. So, obviously, those are the confirmed playoff spots. But last year, you had the Nuggets, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Sacramento Kings, the Phoenix Suns, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Golden State Warriors. Did you go your six by like order or you just picked six?
I do actually have an order. I think
Oh,
I'm pretty
okay.
good. Yeah. Did
Actually,
you do an order?
no, I just picked six. So I'll go first since yours is more like kind of proper. So
Okay.
my six teams that I see like firmly making the playoffs, I think is obviously the Nuggets. I don't
Yep.
think they'll be first though, I will say. And then after that, you got the Lakers, the Suns, the Clippers. I think the Mavs are going to get into that top six. And then
Interesting.
even though there's some kind of inkling that they're starting to, be on the decline, I think Golden State still finishes in that top echelon. Not sure about the
Okay.
order of that, but those are the six that I have.
All right. Interesting. I actually don't have two of the teams you mentioned in
Okay.
yours. And I think it's because it's hard, but I think like this is like the ideal season in which I see it happening. So
Okay.
my top six in order.
Are
Number
you
one,
going? Are you going top to bottom?
okay, I'll go bottom to top to make it like suspenseful.
Okay.
So number six, I have Memphis. I think
Dang. Okay.
I mean they're gonna be 25 games without Ja, and I think they're gonna definitely probably have like a like slight above 500 record during that time. And I think that's gonna hinder them from trying to be up there when you think about how top heavy the West is.
Hmm.
Um, and then number five, I have Golden State. Um, I think a lot of my list is predicated around the idea that these teams are pretty complete and that there's not enough flaws for them to really decline.
Hmm.
So I think Golden State's gonna be fifth. I think the Lakers are gonna be fourth. Um, I think they like obviously showed out through the end of the season of this last season here that they're gonna basically be that team going into this season, and they're gonna be pretty well gelled. I actually have a pretty sleeper pick number three. I'm not gonna lie, but I think it's rationalized by how they started the season last year. I think New Orleans is gonna be third this year.
Fully healthy.
I
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, there hasn't been any recent reports on Zion, but I'm assuming, at
Not
least from
on.
what I've
Not
been
on.
trying to read.
Not on basketball, at least.
I mean, yeah, not on basketball, but I mean, real talk. I think even if he's like 75% of himself, like they're a pretty scary team still,
Hmm.
and they pretty much have that same team, and I think they're pretty complete, honestly. But I think this is like pretty much disregarding like how good Sacramento was this season. I just think New Orleans like started the season extremely strong,
Yeah.
and I think they're gonna want to actually keep building on what they did this season, from, at least from the beginning. I think Phoenix is going to be number two. I just don't think. I think they're going to have some, outside of the off, or sorry, they're going to have some off court issues. I think somewhere down the line,
But you think they'll still be
uh,
able to like remain at
they're
the
going to
top
round
for
up their
most of it?
wins.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think they're going to be the type of team, like much like the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, where they're going to get their wins, but they're going to have like problems through the season where something is happening. And I think it's
Hmm.
just because they're again like a top heavy team. Although I'll give credit, they've signed a lot of players onto their bench that are honestly pretty serviceable. And I think Denver is going to remain number one. I just think
Okay.
they're too sound of a team to really be knocked down a peg. The only way I see them really going any lower is if they suffer a pretty bad injury and they have to play without one of their key guys. But
Hmm.
I think that's my top six.
Can you just list, not like go into it, but just list again from bottom to top?
Yeah. So number six, Memphis. Number five, Golden State. Number four, Lakers. Number three, New Orleans. Number two, Phoenix. And number one, Denver.
Okay. I mean, let's start here. There's one team that we both kind of left out, and it's Sacramento.
Yeah, that's
So
disrespectful for sure.
I think it is, but I also think that they're the kind of team where if they want the same kind of success, I think they have to have a similar season to last year to where everything went right.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
you look at that roster, there wasn't really too many times where it was like this guy's missing a significant amount of time, this guy's out for a while. I mean, you had
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox in the playoffs a little bit there where the ankle was a little questionable. Sabonis got stepped on or whatever that was. But I mean, all in all, I think everything that could have gone right went right for Sacramento last year. And, you know, I think the thing with teams that break out like this, though, is that not to be disrespectful, but I think, bless you, a lot of teams I think aren't expecting it. But now that you have that expectation, now that you've garnered that respect, it's all about really, continuing to build on top of that. Not that Sacramento can't, but I think a lot of the it can be summed up in that, there's film on them now,
Yeah. I
so
think
I think,
yeah, sorry.
oh good.
No, I think what's comparable honestly is it the 2021 Atlanta Hawks where they went to the Eastern Conference Finals? 2020? I think it's 2020.
Yeah, then next
Uh
year they kind of were poopy.
I think I'm not saying they're completely comparable, but I think yeah, these teams that have these deep like resurgences, like unless you have like a deep core, in which I don't think they do personally,
Mm,
they do fall to earth, I think, at least for a season
yeah.
or two.
And I
Yeah.
mean, personally, I don't think they drop out of the playoffs. Like, I think they're
No,
7 or 8. Like, 7 or 8 is probably their floor. They can definitely, I think, finish top six. But, you know, when you look at the moves that a lot of other teams made versus them kind of staying put and their only real move really being in Sasha Vezenkov or however you say it, which is I think is going to be a good signing.
no.
There's still just, it's a lot of trying to do a little to get a lot. And I don't know if that's really going to translate.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right, heading on from there though. I mean Memphis. So what do you think they finish with for the first 25 without Jaw?
Me personally, I think they finished like 13 and 11.
Okay, that's
I don't, I mean,
reasonable.
I mean, I don't know what their first 25 games are like. I haven't looked into
Yeah.
their schedule, but like I think just like playing most of these teams in the West, like if Desmond Bain is your number one option, like if you go down all these top teams, there's someone that's like cooking this team every night, you know?
Mm,
Like, and I just think like yeah, I think they're gonna take some games due to, their kind of capability of being a sound team together. I mean, they played really well without Draw last year. Don't get me wrong, but that was not to start the season. And I think the start of the NBA season is just rocky for every team. And to start without, your kind of spark plug is like, I mean, cars don't work that way, you know?
okay, I like that. That and being Memphis, I respect that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're again one of those 7 or 8 seed kind of teams, but I think even if they get through the first 25 with Jaw, like with a reasonable record, when you look at having to gel two very need the ball kind of guys with Marcus Smart and Jaw, obviously
Oh,
Jaw's going to
right.
get the ball, but
Marcus
you know,
Smart.
having that backcourt there, which I think could be a solid backcourt for sure, but I think it's just kind of figuring everything out. You got Marcus Smart really trying to like whip people into shape. You know what I mean? I think he's the big bro on that team, and I think it's just about translating to everybody getting on board with that. So, I can see them making the top six, but I just think that having to really just gel everyone together very quickly after those 25 games is going to be a little hard.
Exactly.
Mm. Another team, the Pelicans. I mean, how are you feeling about the Pelicans overall? Just like not only just with Zion, but I mean, when we looked at their summer league, Jordan Hawkins, I think looked really good. Little small, but looked good. Dyson Daniels looks pretty solid, and I think when you just look at their whole roster, they're like almost too deep at every position except maybe center.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. They're too deep in like I would say a good, more positive than negative connotation.
Hmm.
And the other thing is I think they have like a well-tenured team at this point. Like CJ McCollum has stuck his place on the team for a good like 3 seasons now, 2 seasons.
I
Um,
think this is his third, or I
yeah,
guess
going
two
into
and
his
a
third.
half if you want to count like
Yeah,
whatever. But yeah.
exactly. And I mean Brandon Ingram I think is going to come into his own this season personally. I think he already has been, but I think people have like maybe have been sleeping on him just because I mean, this team, he obviously like didn't play a lot of the games last year. I think that's one thing. And they just suffered injuries from like at least all their star players at some point last season. But I think like when they're healthy, like this team is really going to come to their own because they're just, I think they have probably in my opinion, is it safe to say, probably the deepest roster in the NBA.
Oh,
Maybe that's maybe a
dang. I
hot
mean, looking at it,
like
because okay, if we're going by like playable guys, you
yeah,
got CJ, Zion, Bi, Jonas, Trey
Herb
Murphy,
Jones.
Herb Jones,
You
Jose
gotta count Jose
Alvarado,
Alvarado.
Hundies,
Larry Nance Jr., you gotta count
Larry
him.
Naz. Oh, I forgot he was on that team. And then now you got the new guys. Dyson, I think, is for sure going to crack the rotation this year. Jordan Hawkins,
And
I think, is a guy where his shooting is going to definitely have him see some time. And I mean, just that alone, they're 10 deep. And I'm gonna look up their depth chart real quick. But I mean, yeah, we just listed those guys out. It's a solid roster for sure. But I don't know. It's just hard for me. Oh, Najee Marshall's a guy,
Yeah,
another
Najee,
guy
I was
too.
gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But I mean, when we're looking at it, I just think that it's so, it's a really good roster, but having to hinge all of your kind of playoff and deep playoff run hopes on a healthy Zion is
yeah, yeah.
that's a little bit of a suspect bet. But I mean, we'll see how it all shakes out for sure. If I had to pick, I'm an optimist, so I would hope that Zion does play at least like even if he plays like 50-55 games, I think that's enough to get them into the playoffs for sure.
Yeah. And if he's healthy for the playoffs, really, that's the
Mm,
most important thing too.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I think their ceiling is 3 for me, and I think I'm just being optimist. But I think their floor this year is like 8 for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good range right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you throw out a team. What team you want to talk about next?
A team, I mean,
We'll
I kind
see.
of
We'll
want
keep in this top six. We'll head to the other teams later.
the top 6. I mean, how do you feel about Golden State? I mean, they're obviously like they're the vets. They're the Spurs
They're
of
the
this.
yeah, for sure. They're the elder statesmen. Holy. Uh
Yeah.
it's I. I think
It's cool. It's cool.
yeah, I mean it's all right. But
Yeah.
no, getting back into it, I think it's a solid roster, but I think we're just gonna have to see what they really do with Chris Paul because
Yeah.
if I had a say in it, I would prefer him to be the sixth man. I was looking at their depth chart earlier. It has the starting lineup with Draymond at the five. So they
Oh,
could do something like that. I don't think they'll do that full time, but I like the idea of Chris Paul having a second unit with Gary Payton the second, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga. That those four right there, I think, could be a deadly, deadly unit alone. And then AirPods as well as a guy who's big guard, super duper high IQ, can stretch the floor, and then you know everybody in the Golden State Warriors organization is smoking on that Lester Quinones pack. So he's another guy you got to look to. I just think that it's a similar vibe to the roster they had last year, where you're still trying to develop guys, but the additions of again a Chris Paul, a Corey Joseph, I think those could be really really beneficial moves to like helping these young guys
oh,
get more into it. So I think their ceiling for me personally, it's like maybe fourth. But I just think that having to any roster that really has Chris Paul playing an integral part, you got to be prepared for him to play like 50 games at most. And even that now sounds like a little bit of a stretch.
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like out of the talks. I think it's just like been put under wraps for a while. But do you really think Chris Paul is going to be on this roster the entire season?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I
I
mean,
mean,
who else would really like you think take a shot on Chris Paul at this point? Which sounds so
uh,
disrespectful to say, but
probably just like I mean, I don't have a name, but like a win now team that needs a guard. I think that's always a thing. Like, I mean, to be honest, I don't fucking know actually. I could see like some BS happening with the Celtics trying to go for Chris Paul.
yeah, that's kind of who I had in my mind. And then
Yeah.
if I'm going to stay, I don't. I think there's no way in hell I kind of let stuff like that like happen. So
Yeah,
I
that's true.
I do think he'll be fully invested this year with Golden State roster wise, but I think it's just trying to get him to understand that maybe not understand, but buy into that idea of being more of a six man, you know, like kind of how Derrick Rose was
Oh, like New York.
with not even no more I'm thinking more like Minnesota to where he's still a part of the
Okay,
rotation.
yes. Yeah.
Very different play styles first of all, but just the idea of like coming from being that guy to being that guy off the bench.
Yeah, I can see that for
Mm.
sure.
How you feel about the Nuggets? Because I'm not gonna lie, I was looking at like their depth chart. I'm kind of I'm feeling very meh if I'm being real, because I think they're relying on a lot of young guys. You know, during the summer league, they obviously had Peyton Watson showing out. Hunter Tyson generated a lot of buzz. Julian Strother's looking like the guy who's going to be Christian Braun. Christian Braun's looking like he's going to be a Bruce Brown. But, you know, outside of the starting five, the only real veteran presence you have is Reggie Jackson off of that bench. But you got DeAndre or Jordan, but obviously you're not going to have him in the rotation. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're obviously going to be in the top six, but it's crazy to say. I can see them going as low as like 4 or 5 this year.
I think there is that precedence I could see happening as well. I think it's just more so that like they just have a lot of players that in a sense just gel extremely well.
Hmm.
And like I think the comparison that we keep making to like the Toronto Raptors in what 2019 was it 2019 they won?
Yeah.
2020? Yeah, 2019. Uh I think it like makes a lot of sense. I mean, you just have like I think Nikola Jokic like I think his presence makes players better and like kind of I think accelerates their
Hmm.
growth in a lot of ways
That's a good
just
point.
cuz like having someone that plays almost like this like hand in hand guard, but also big role. Like he kind of fills both ends of the floor and I think allows guys to get involved. So I think when new guys come into the rotation, like you've always seen them thrive. Like even when Bones Highland came into the rotation, he like started to excel right away,
Hmm.
like even in his young years. I mean, Aaron Gordon, I would say like prior to obviously being on this team was not like much talk of the town and now he was in like all-star consideration this year. Like
Good point.
I personally think like I don't think it's been underrated at this point because Jokic has obviously been given his flowers a lot more as of recent, but I still think like his impact is pretty like off the charts. Like I think they're going to hold on pretty well just because I just think all the other teams in the West don't have it solved like they do.
Hmm.
Like
I see
I
that.
don't I just don't think any team puts like this is the thing. I think I have Phoenix second, like not to talk about Phoenix, but because I think they're maybe the better team on paper, obviously, but they have a lot to solve. And I think like Denver like has it solved and they're probably just working on what they can do better at this point. So I think they
Hmm.
have the pedigree and the roster to run it back, honestly.
Okay.
But yeah, I
Yes.
just don't think I don't think they're getting knocked down a peg.
Alrighty, alrighty. Yeah, just to add a little aside, if there is a team that I'm looking at, if I'm Kelly Oubre Jr., if I want to sign, a little vet min just to get the value back up,
Oh
I think
yeah,
Nuggets might be my first choice for sure.
he would be good off the bench for sure.
Oh yeah.
Just like get things rolling on a second unit. I think
Hmm.
that would be a good signing for them.
Definitely. But yeah, I see that. I think though I'm not here to say that like they're gonna shit the bed or anything like that when it comes to defending the chip. All I'm saying is when you look at like the loss of a guy like Jeff Green, integral voice in the locker room. Bruce Brown, probably one of the best Swiss Army knives when it comes to looking at role players. There's a lot of guys that, you know, aren't going to score, give you 20 a night, aren't going to give you, double double back to back to back, but they're going to they play their role and they play it perfectly. So, I think it's definitely going to be a rough time defending, but yeah, I think they're more than capable of doing it. Speaking of
Yeah.
Phoenix, we gotta talk about it considering one of our homies is a big Phoenix fan. You think they're second? I think they're gonna suck. No.
Nah, I think this is like I think the experiment is like going to go well just because I think this time around for KD, he doesn't have problematic players around him. I mean, Devin Booker, in my opinion, is problematic. Don't get me wrong, but he does play.
I
He
think it's
plays.
he's more so problematic if you're the opposing team.
he's just a bitch. Like honestly, like he's that's what it is. He's the thing is he's a good player. He's just not like good morale, and I think, but he plays games. That's what I mean. Like he plays 70 games,
You
or
know what
something
it is?
like that.
You know, I've done some soul searching, some growing. I think that's what makes him like the Kobe disciple. You know, he's not there to be your homie. He's there to win. Come on, he's there to win games.
Nah, but he still
He
be
definitely.
co-
If you
no,
complain,
he a bitch. He questioning a double team in a fucking pickup run. He a bitch. I don't give a fuck.
let's be real. Is that the weakest thing you've ever seen a like a NBA superstar do?
I mean, to get caught in 4K saying that, bro, like you cannot ever like be put in the same sentence as Kobe ever again, in my opinion.
Damn.
Like, I'm sure players have complained about it too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure there's
He's
been
just the
another
one that
player
got
that's like,
caught.
yeah, and like the thing is, if you're gonna wear Kobe's every game and be like that, like, then you better not be saying this shit in front of the camera, you know?
Did you see his signature? I don't know if it's
Uh
real, but there was like
oh
a
oh
different. That shit
yeah
was
yeah.
weak as fuck.
The
It looked like a it looked like a shoe before you sew on the actual sole. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Where it looks
they look
like a ballerina shoe almost.
yeah, or like they look like those like you ever wear shoes from Payless, like the
Oh,
Airwalk brand?
oh damn! I know. I had the exact shoes that you're thinking of. Yeah, they do look like that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. That shit's weak, bro.
Yeah, it's not even like the Jason Tatum ones where it's like it looks over the top. It just looks too simple. Like
Yeah, it's
if
definitely
it's a lifestyle shoe, still kind of weak, but not as weak.
more acceptable. It's not a hoop
Yeah,
shoe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, anyways, you know, when we're looking at Phoenix, I agree. I think the experiment's going to be a lot more successful this time. Katie's going to
Mhm.
have another winless ring, if you know what I mean. But I think the big thing here is just if you're willing, if Frank Vogel is able to get DeAndre Ayton to buy in. And, you know, jury's still out on that. I'm still someone who's very high on DeAndre Ayton, but I think it's just being able to get him to realize that, hey, you're not going to get the 15, 20 shots a night that you want, but, you know, second chance points I think are going to be a really big thing with this team. Being able to, you know, grab a rebound with all these guys that are going to be taking a lot of shots is going to be a big thing. And the primary guy who should be the benefactor of that is obviously DeAndre Ayton. Now, I think Frank Vogel's still going to try to implement something where he's getting post touches or whatever it may be. But I think he's the guy that could really make or break this team from being, you know, second round conference finals exit to potentially, you know, playing in the big dance. But when you look at like the resources they had, I think it's a solid roster, honestly.
It is. Yeah. Can't really question it. I think
Mm,
their team is genuinely really good this time around.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's just a wait and see type thing. I think DeAndre Ayton is probably the biggest X factor.
definitely.
Because honestly, he got dog-eared by Jokic.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
yeah. And like that could just happen again.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like that's an issue that I don't think has been solved by this roster yet.
Yeah, it's not even like it sucks that he got 30 put on him constantly. Ooh, sorry about that. A little steam thing was popping up. But it's that he didn't give anything back, really anything
No.
at all.
Dude.
You know, if Jokic is giving you 30, you got to at least give him 15, 16, 20, you know? But
Yeah.
obviously that didn't happen. But moving on from there, because, you know, everybody's going to be wondering. That's probably what everybody's kind of thought process is. Talk about Dallas, you know. What makes you kind of evict them from your top 6?
I just don't think they've honestly like looking at their team right now. I opened something up by accident here. Uh, like I don't know, man. Like they don't like even really have a proper like front court right now. Like I'm not high on like I'm high, obviously like Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic are like players that in their own right already put you in a certain conversation. But this is like building like basically like like if you ever watch NBA rebuild videos or like 2K rebuild videos, this is like where this is where you start, you know. You gotta move pieces around for this to actually happen. Like just because you got two good players, you got like respectfully, like no one on this team I think is on like another level that will take them there. Like Seth Curry, you know, Seth Curry's cool. Rashawn Holmes can be cool. Markieff Morris could be cool. Sam Hardaway Jr. is on and off in my opinion.
True.
Like I'm just looking at these names and there's not really enough for me to say that this team is really going to outclass the teams that have 1 through 5, you know? Like even if Luka Doncic is who he is, and even if Kyrie Irving is who he is, like if they don't even re-sign Christian Wood, like this could just be the same season as the end of their last season,
I
you know? Like that's
heard I heard the talk of the town is that they're trying to do a sign and trade with Christian Wood just so they don't lose him for
right,
nothing.
right.
I mean, if
Some
I'm looking
BS
at
with
this
Cat.
roster, I kind of like they have some nice pieces. And I think me saying they're top six is kind of me buying into them for the next few years. But I really, really liked what they did in the draft, being able to get Derek Lively the second as a guy who perfectly fits there. You know, Omax Prosper is another guy. I don't think he'll necessarily be playing all that much compared to Derek Lively, just because if you look at Omax, he's trying to get a spot over guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Grant Williams, Josh Green, Maxi Kleber. I think those are your four pretty solid, can play 3 to 4 guys. And then Dante Exum's another guy who's, making his NBA return. We'll see how that goes. So, but
Yeah,
the main guy I'm really intrigued with is Derek Lively the second because, coming out of college, he's a guy that could stretch the floor, play crazy defense. He was in that kind of Miles Turner archetype. Spent his year in Duke, doesn't necessarily get to do the same thing. And now I think we're really just trying to see if that high school game can really translate, which I think to an extent it will. And if it does, Derek Lively's probably the perfect guy to pair next to people like Luca and Kyrie. Because, he's not going to want to bang bang in the post. Throw him up the lobs, little catch and shoot opportunities, play some solid defense. That could be a solid like, you know, 3-person like combo for the next few years. And then when you look at another guy, Jaden Hardy's someone I'm very, very high on when I'm looking at this squad. Because, I mean, when Luca and Kyrie, you do have to give them a little bit of a break. That's
yeah.
Jaden Hardy's time to shine. And when you looked at his season last year, it was a lot of inconsistencies, not only just on his end, with efficiency and all that, but Jason Kidd had him playing like 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And then once they started to shut everyone down, once he got like a steady amount of playing time, he was able to really show like, hey, there's a reason why he was one of the best scorers coming out of the draft. I think it was last year or whatever it was. But he's a guy I think could definitely kind of start to stamp his name onto the NBA court kind of thing. But yeah, I can see where you're feeling where it's like it's not as polished as a roster of like a New Orleans, not as top heavy as a Phoenix. You know, I see that, but I got some faith in them.
I think I just want them to prove me wrong. I think
Mm-hmm.
we were like dick riding the shit out of them last
Hell
season.
yeah, Christian
Like,
Wood till I die, man.
I mean, I'm behind Christian Wood honestly, but like, damn,
That was
last
that was
season
so
was a stinker.
disappointing. Yeah, for sure.
That was a stinker, and like I just don't think like they're yeah, like I agree their draft was really good, but I think like obviously just statistically, if you were to look at it, like usually through the draft, you know, it takes some development before
Yeah,
these players like get to where they
yeah.
need to
They're
be.
still probably a couple years from like being at the place of like where New Orleans is now, for example.
Exactly.
Mm.
But I have faith. I just I just want them to prove me wrong first.
for sure. I mean, do we really got to talk about the Clippers? I feel like, same old, same old. If they're healthy, everything goes right, they can win. So I think let's
That's
talk
the
about the
narrative all the time.
hell yeah. I think I want to say this is the last year of it, but I think they're really just going to wait until maybe the wheels fall off at this point because they got the new stadium opening up. They're going to want to have guys can really sell seats and put butts in the stadium. So let's talk about the LA team, the real LA team. As much as everybody says, yeah, I was a Clippers fan, that's cap. Let's talk about the Lakers. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't order it by like standings or anything, but I think the Lakers could really challenge like for the top of the West for sure. Cuz I mean, if you look at it, they're like too deep at every position and they're like 4 or 5 deep when it comes to guys that can run their offense cuz I mean, obviously this isn't set in stone, but here's like their kind of if they had 5 point guards, this is who they could run. Not in any order because LeBron's at the end of it. So you got D'Lo, Gabe Vincent, Jalen Hood Shafino, Austin Reeves, LeBron James. And even looking at like their starters and that bench unit, it's very, very solid. And not only that, they got guys like Max Christie who really showed out. I think could crack like little 5-10 minutes here and there. Jalen Hood Shafino is a guy I think is going to be able to learn from D'Lo, Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, obviously LeBron. I think really tool himself to be ready for life after LeBron when it comes to Lakerland. And Anthony Davis we saw kind of started to really get back to where he was. If he's able to translate that back, that's a whole nother story. If Rui's playing like how he was in the playoffs, this team's scary for sure. I think just the depth they have, and it's not only just like depth wise for overall, but when you have those spells where LeBron's on the injury report, Anthony Davis is on the injury report, you got guys who can step up. And when I'm looking at the Lakers, I think the depth and the top of their roster, I think could really prove to them being able to challenge for the top of the West for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree, honestly. I mean, they got Cam Reddish, so
Hell yeah, man. The
no,
God.
I think like Gabe Vincent was like a sleeper signing this year for
Mm,
sure. I think that one is going to prove to be pretty lethal. I mean, he's a dog. I can't lie. I think like it showed up. I mean, like obviously the playoffs went the way they did, but he showed up a
mm,
good portion of that. He obviously through the regular season was like an anchor for the Miami Heat. And then you still have players like Rui Hachimura coming back who came into his own like during the season. Um, and yeah, I don't really have anything to disagree with you on that one. I just think like yeah, I think that yeah, I did put him at 4 on my list, and I think that's like where I have him right now.
I feel like four
And I
is
think it's
almost their floor when you look at like
damn.
the depth of this team. I don't think they're gonna stink.
No, I don't think they're gonna stink, but I mean they still like I think knowing how the Lakers have started the last few seasons, I'm not saying like they're obviously like starting the same way, but I think for some reason shit always just like hits the fan for them for the
Mm.
first bit. At least track record wise over the last 2 3 years, I think they're gonna have to still mesh again. I think they're one of those teams, and I think if I'm being honest, like completely honest, like and this maybe I'll get slandered for this take, but I think it has to do a lot with LeBron on a lot of teams. I think a lot of players have talked about it in player interviews, but it's just the fact that LeBron either meshes well with players or he kind of makes players worse around him. It's like no in between.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
feel that.
So I think it's always just like learning how to play with LeBron again is like pretty tough for some people.
Mm,
And yeah, I think Anthony Davis is also just, always a question mark. So
definitely.
that's but I think I wouldn't say your take on them being like fourth as their floor. Like I don't think that's a bad take. I just think like this team is just always a walking variable in my opinion at this
Yeah,
point.
Alrighty, I
Yeah.
think last team I want to touch on personally, I think is OKC. I don't know if there's anybody else we can really get into
Yeah.
until we get to like the rookies, but none of us had OKC. I don't think that's any form of disrespect. I think it's just that they're still a young team. We saw what they were able to do last year and really, you know, surprise a lot of people. They ruined LeBron's moment by winning the game, but I think this is like the first year where I think it's almost like Jaw's rookie year, where they're taking the league by storm. They're putting everyone on notice. They make the playoffs, but maybe fall a little short. We saw this year where it's a similar thing. Put the league on notice, started really hooping, but when you get to the play in, when you get to high pressure basketball, they just have just not enough to get over the hump. And now we're seeing they're adding a guy like Chet Holmgren and Kaysen Wallace. So that whole team is just really, it's intriguing because I think you have the length of a Chet Holmgren to where you can get away with playing a small guard lineup of like, you know, you could have Kaysen, SGA, Josh Josh Giddey. Well, maybe not a small guard lineup, but a multi guard lineup of more than two. So I think Mark Dagnall's got a lot of things he could do with this squad, and I'm excited.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if we were intending to, because I know we were talking about breakout players, but I think Josh Giddey is going to really be a big instrumental role to this team
Yeah,
this season.
that's
I
a good
mean, he already
segue into a
has,
section.
yeah, I mean, I think Josh Giddey, in my opinion, is going to be one of the better players on this team. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, he already is, but I think he is going to start becoming like that type of player that is a double double player, like night by night, just because you are adding Chet Holmgren, who really is going to be able to get you those like front court, like I guess dishes per se.
Yeah,
I mean, his usage might go down in terms of scoring, but I don't think that's a bad thing when you look at how deep this roster is starting to come into their own.
yeah.
I
He
mean, they
doesn't
even
really
have
need to
they,
score either.
no, exactly. Like I think he's just going to be the facilitator, and I think he is going to really run the ship
Yeah,
when it comes to like getting the ball around.
I look
Uh,
to a guy like Andre Miller that
mm,
that I think would be the perfect kind of role for Josh Giddey in terms of a guy who's not really doing too much to score, but is just able to get like just really run that offense.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think I agree. This team is definitely has a pretty deep floor. I mean, you just never know.
Mm.
But I think their ceiling is also like, in my opinion, maybe this is a hot take to say it, but I think their ceiling is third in the West.
Whoo, third?
Yeah,
Damn.
I think they're just this team has a lot of variables too, just because they are
Okay.
young. I think that's the thing. Maybe third is obviously a hot take, but we
Yeah,
obviously saw
that's a crazy
how
hot take.
I mean we saw how Shea did last season, and
True.
now you're actually coming into it's like a season where you have a full team plus some obviously great additions, and everyone's just aging together. Like Lou Dort's been on the team for a while, Josh
Mm.
Giddey's been on the team for a couple seasons. You're adding like someone like Victor Oladipo just came onto the team,
Yeah, I don't
if
think
I'm
he'll
not mistaken.
play though.
I mean, he's not going to play, but that's some experience at least in the
True.
locker
That's a
room.
nice little vet.
Um, and then yeah, like people like Jalen Williams, like having like a good latter half of the rookie season. You still got Poku off the bench. I'm just kidding. I mean, they just have like a lot of young potential, and I think like you mentioned, I think Memphis, like Jaws rookie year, I think they could put the league on notice. Honestly,
100%.
yeah.
Speaking of young guys, I think one thing before I'll go into like my kind of breakout guys, I want to see Trey Man and Usman Jiang on different teams. I want to see them spread their wings because I think that's the thing with the Thunder and the Rockets is that they have so many young assets, so many young pieces to where none of them I think are going to develop properly, having to like kind of go over all each other. So that's my little
Yeah,
spiel. But getting into it, you already mentioned it. The breakout players for this conference. I think first one I'll mention, I like Moses Moody. I think
Moses Moody.
what he was able to do in the playoffs with the limited time he had, gives you a lot of energy off that bench. I think he's a great spark plug. Not only that, the off ball movement I think is something that's really special with him because I mean, we know how deadly that can be in that offense. And I think when you're just looking at guys who, when we talk about the playoffs, we've always heard in interviews to where it could come down to like one loose ball, and if you're not the team that gets that, you lose the series. And I think Moses Moody is that kind of guy to where I would depend on him to create those winning plays, you know, high quality basketball, high quality IQ. I think all of that kind of encompasses Moses Moody. And, you know, when you're playing with Chris Paul, the game comes a lot easier. And I think Moses is going to be a guy that I think is really a big beneficiary of that. Just because, I think Kuminga's another one, obviously, you could talk about. But I think with Moses, I like how he's not just static when he's not getting the ball. He's always moving.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's actually a sleeper pick, honestly.
Big
We'll
sleeper.
say.
Who else you got?
But see, when I think about breakout players, I think about like Laurie Markkinen last year, for example, obviously coming into his own, coming out of the cocoon and turning into the
Mm,
player he is. So I think honestly, like this is not to say that he hasn't gotten to where he is, because I mean, looking at his stats from last year, he already is a player of his own. But I think with the first 25 games not having Ja, I think Desmond Bain is really going to come into his own.
yeah, I had
Uh,
him up there too.
yeah, I think he's going to obviously see a huge uptick in usage.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily going to stop. And I think it's going to be very beneficial for this team just because you're going to have like I almost think it's like going to be like the guard rotation similar to the two Jays at this point, which it already is to some degree, but Desmond Bain's not, Jalen Brown level. But I could see him, garnering a lot of like confidence through these 25 games and really becoming like more of a 24 point per game player versus a 21 point per game player. And that's good.
I was literally saying I think he'll average. I think comfortably, I can see him averaging 25 through this first stretch without Jaw.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a safe number. I mean, he finished the season at 21.5. I don't think that's a hot take, but I think it is like one of those things that people are going to like not notice because they're going to be a 14 and 11, 15 and 10 team, like somewhere in the middle of the pack. But I think he's going to remain steady after the fact just because he's like, undoubtedly one of the best shooters in the league right now.
No
And
doubt.
I just don't see why he couldn't be that second. I mean, he already is, but he can't be that second guy consistently.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like that's a big thing with Memphis where they say they need a second guy. I think Desmond's more than capable of that. And then just one thing I want to point to. I think even if he struggles in this first stretch, because, you know, you're going from being guarded by the team's second or third best defender to where you're garnering like a Mikal Bridges or Herb Jones, the premier defensive stopper on teams is dedicated to, you know, mucking up your night. But even if Desmond kind of struggles with being the main center of attention on the scouting report, once you're able to get a job back, once you're able to kind of revert back to where you were, I think that could really help just accelerate to where he's at. Because I mean, when you go from like a Mikal Bridges to getting guarded from a Cam Johnson, no respect to Cam, but
Yeah,
there's a certain kind of confidence you gain on top of that. So yeah, I think Desmond's a great pick for me. Uh, I'm gonna say Malik Monk. When I'm looking
Mm.
at that squad, what he was able to do in the playoffs, the insane. I think it was what they each had at least 35 apiece with him and Fox in whatever game that was. But I think Malik is if I could put some money down, which I might later, I would put Malik Monk down to win six man of the year. I think just it's another year of getting into that
Not Chris
system.
Paul.
Nah, 'cause I think as much as I'd love Chris Paul to be the six man, I feel like they're gonna start him
Okay.
just
Okay.
based off of like the pedigree or whatever. But I mean Malik Monk, when you compare his stats to Malcolm Brogdon's from last year, it's not that far off. I think Brogdon was maybe 16, 17, and 5 with 3 assists. Monk was more like 15, 5, and 5 at some points. And I think
Hmm.
if you're able to get a little uptick, if he gets to the 18, maybe even the 20s, if you really want to be super optimistic, I think that's something that Malik's more than capable of. And I think just being another year in the system, understanding the tendencies of a Mike Brown coach team, and another guy again, Sasha Vezenkov, when he comes to there, it's just going to open up the floor for him more and more. And I think if you have him, Kevin Herter and Sasha all on the floor together, I think Malik's is going to have a lot of room to operate in, and I think that's going to contribute to him getting a lot of opportunity to really like have a bigger impact on a game.
Okay.
So
I
not like
like
a
that pick.
crazy breakout, but I think he can take like a big step into where his role is now.
Right. And I think he's just maturing in the league now. Like I think you've seen flashes of him being a very like serviceable player.
Mm,
And I think being in this specific situation, like I think he is gracefully like, accepted this expand role like how he played last year and he
yeah,
went crazy even went crazy in the playoffs, obviously. Um so I think I do see like that being kind of the case for them. Um I mean, another person I think I personally have, and I think it's just more out of hope than, speaking the truth. But I think I have John Collins seeing,
okay,
a resurgence. And I don't think it's like a breakout for him per se, because he's obviously been like, I mean, prior to DeJounte Murray, that second option in Atlanta for a while
yeah.
now. And coming to the Utah Jazz team that's sort of just raw and still figuring out their lineups here. I mean, me personally, I don't see a lot happening for Colin Sexton. I'm not trying to, say this man's career is over by any means, but
Oh man, I remember last year I was like, if there's a guy I want in fantasy this year for sure, it was Colin Sexton, and
I picked him, and I mean he's still gonna play around, but like I could see them very much, bringing in their younger guys to like
yeah,
work around like getting them better, like Keontae George. And I mean, keep in mind, I think Taylor Hendricks is gonna get a lot of burn too. I think John
I was
Collins
gonna
is
say,
gonna,
yeah,
yeah, but I think John Collins, if he can really prove it, which I think he wants to, I think he could have not a Laurie Markkinen year, but I think he could get back to being a 20-point per game player like this season.
whew, I like the
But
optimism. Yeah, I'm a big John Collins
yeah,
guy. Yeah, I
yeah,
like that pick
and yeah, I mean he's a player that does a little bit of everything. Like
for sure.
in my opinion, I wouldn't compare it completely, but he gives me Tobias Harris vibes. He's a cool 20.
He's a
Yeah,
cool 20 before his thumb got fucked up or whatever it was.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
He, yeah,
I like the idea of him going to Utah and getting a fresh start. I
yeah,
am personally a guy where I would prefer Taylor Hendricks, but I think that's the thing with John Collins. When you look at just to make an observation, who knows if I'm right about this. When you look at like when he was in Atlanta, there was never really a threat of him losing his starting job, I feel. There might have been a couple times where like, oh, you're seeing AJ Griffin start to come into his own, you're seeing DeAndre Hunter still being effective in his role to where you're seeing a little bit of glimmer of like it might be over. But
yeah,
he's never really, even from day one. Let me make sure I'm not just talking out my ass here, but it just has that feeling that that's always kind of been a guarantee. Like as much as as Trey Young is Atlanta's point guard, he was always like gonna be Atlanta's power forward. And when you're looking at here, yeah, outside of his rookie year, he's only come off the bench for 3 games. And again, that excludes his rookie year where you pay your dues or whatever it is. So I think he's been used to getting minutes, and now that you're gonna kind of be pushed into this fight or flight mode, that could it can make you or break you. So I like the
yeah,
opportunity for him. I think it's a good thing for both him and Taylor Hendricks. And man, Utah's a team I can think if there's another sleeper, I would put them in there.
yeah. I think that's a good statement.
Yeah. Next player I'm gonna mention, I think Devin Vassell. Last year was already
Mm,
kind of the beginning of an indication that he's ready to break out, but I think a year, hopefully, he's fully healthy, where you're able just to again impose your will on the game. You're able to get to your spots. He's a Chris Middleton type of player, which you know how I be with those types of guys. And I think just again, he's able to get to his spots, and when you equate that to the fact that he's gonna have a guy like Wemby, who even if he's not like doesn't have it going offensively, he's gonna garner a lot of the gravity. And I think Devin Vassell is going to be able to take advantage of that. And playing alongside a smart point guard in Trey Jones, I think Devin's just in the perfect situation to be that number two guy, to be, you know, not the give it to me last shot of the game or whatever it is, but he's going to help you get over the hump for sure.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, the obvious thing maybe is just that now that, San Antonio has obviously garnered the pick of maybe the century,
Mm-hmm.
you know, quote unquote, like I think they're at a point now, obviously, where they're playing to play. They're not going to be bullshitting anymore for a season. So I think this is where you really start seeing players starting to improve amongst each other. I think having obviously Wemby is going to cause the other players on that team to want to play at that level, or at least feel at that level.
Mm.
So you could even throw names like Kelton Johnson into that mix, even
Oh
though
yeah.
he's come into his own already. Like in the last season, like I think he's gonna have or feel like he's gonna have something to prove.
I think him and
At least
Sohan are like the perfect, like those three alone, I think are perfect
yeah,
complementaries to Wemby.
exactly. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't have any more guys. Like, I mean, I do have a few more guys, but these are more so like the stars on my list,
Okay.
like that I think are just going to basically, you know, not like necessarily, become that much better, but be those players this season.
Yeah, throw them
I had
out, and
three.
then if
I
anything, we'll talk about a little bit, and then we can get into like the rookies.
Yeah, I would say okay. Well, I think the obvious one, in my opinion, is Anthony Edwards. Uh, I think he's already pretty much in the last season showed that he's going to be that guy in this conference. I personally have this idea, and I think it's going to happen that Timberwolves are going to make a midseason move. They've just taken too much shit to like not be able to like ride this team out any longer. Like I think they're gonna be the type of team that like lets this experiment for maybe just the half the season and make a trade somewhere down the line. So
Mm.
I think Anthony Edwards is going to they're gonna commit obviously on him. I think that's the one thing.
Do you
And
think
then
Ant
I think
can?
they're gonna
Sorry to cut you off. Do you think Ant can
yeah,
average 30 this year? Think he
that's
can?
what
He
like
can get up to that?
that's what I mean. Like I think they get rid of one player and he ends up finishing like yeah, like averaging like close to 30. I think that's where my head is right now. I think that obviously those things have to happen, but I just don't see them holding on to both Cat and Rudy Gobert. I mean, unless they want to be like playing in mediocrity forever. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on too long about that one. I think oh, this is like another like crazy pick. I think I was smoking something when I wrote this down, but I think Zion is gonna do
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Unless that
like
motherfucker gets on the court, we'll see. Who's the? Do you say you had three?
yeah.
Who's the
I mean,
last
let's
one?
be. I think. Okay, here's the thing. This other guy, like, I just think is going to. I can't even rationalize this one. Maybe this one just came from some sort of intuition, and I think I say that because when you already look at how he's doing, he's not going to have like that much crazier of an uptick. But I think De'Aaron Fox is going to like show up this season, and I think it's because they're going to
Ooh,
want to be
just
that team
continue.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going to be on a tear. And I think it's because he's played one season without Tyrese Halliburton, but I think he's finally figured it out with Domantas Sabonis. And now I think they really start making a move. Like, I wouldn't say it's the worst to compare them to like where Jokic and Jamal Murray were at few seasons before the last season. I think he's going to want to continue to play play to that like potential he has. Like I don't think he's necessarily reached his ceiling,
Mm.
but
Yeah, good point.
I yeah,
I mean, I think
no, go on, go on.
one thing I would just add is you saw how when he came into the league, he wasn't so much, there wasn't as much of a willingness to stretch the floor and to, shoot the three. And now, obviously, the past few years, he started to ramp up a bit on that. I mean, we saw how I think it was a playoff game where he hit like five threes or something like that. But if he's able to even get to like, doesn't have to be like a crazy 40% or anything like that. But if he's able to average like a respectable 35% on like five or so attempts, I think he can continue to grow his game, and then all of that will just make everything else come even easier. So pause, but
Yeah,
I like that pick. Yeah, I think he's just going to continue to
yeah,
build off of last year and be a tear for sure.
yeah. And really, this list of superstars or quote unquote like soon to be superstars maybe is that like I think these are just players that are waiting to like really have their season. I don't think Zion has had his season, and maybe he won't ever. But I'm high on Zion. De'Aaron Fox, I think maybe didn't get like the biggest like recognition, but obviously he had a good season last season. But I think he just hasn't had that season. The same with Anthony Edwards, and I think it's just because of their situations. But I
Mm.
do believe for all three of these players, their situations could like turn around,
I think they could
especially Zion.
become like center pieces and center talking points in the
Just in the
game of
NBA.
basketball. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly.
All right, transitioning into the rookies. So I think before we get into maybe a few kind of obscure ones, whether it's our favorites or whatever, let's talk about the big fish in the sea. Wemby. How are you feeling about Wemby heading into his rookie season?
I still don't know, man. Like, I think if I'm being honest, like when I watch him play, like I question how much his game is going to translate.
Hmm.
Like, I don't doubt how skilled he is as a player. Like, someone of his height is generational with the skill he has. It's just that there's like still so many other variables you have to consider, like physicality, durability, paint play against those more physical players. Like, I think it's going to be a rough adjustment for the first month or two,
Yeah.
in my, depending on, the matchups and everything. But I also think, like, he, if there's one thing about his game, it's that his buckets, like, he wills the ball into the net. Like, like he is slow as shit, but there's always a way that
Yeah.
he,
Like I'm still not fully sold on that tween shit translating, man.
yeah,
Cause I
yeah.
saw Kai
I
Jones pick that shit. If Kai Jones can pick it, what happens when he goes up against some of these like elite defenders?
Right. And I think it's more so that like he just has certain skills that like at his height like are just unprecedented like for any player to go up against. Like the fact he can kind of like bring up his arm to like, a certain part of the board and like hit like a tough lay but make it look easy like every time. Like he hits so many tough shots that like at that point you just know it's because he like knows how to use his body.
Yeah, you can see
Um
that definitely.
Yeah, like every time I see highlights of him, it's like that shot shouldn't have went in for the average player, but you kind of forget that he's tall as shit. Um, so I think it's just like he is unguardable in a lot of ways. I just think there's certain aspects of his game that I don't know, it'll be tough to translate for sure.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how the scheme is like created around Wemby. Because I think it's
Yeah,
pretty firm that he's not going to be like, well, he's obviously going to take the jump ball, but I think outside of that, he's probably going to be more of a power forward. Sohan's one of those guys to where it's like a PJ Tucker kind of build to where you can guard five. So I don't think it'll be so much that he's going to be instantly, put thrown into the depths against a guy like Joel Embiid. There's definitely going to be bits of that,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think for Wemby, it's just really about like I don't want to say this first year is a wash, but I would much rather just kind of sit in this first season as a way of like translating to the American game because we all know how much of a difference it is from the Euro game. If you had to predict a stat line for Wemby this year, what do you think he averages? Points, rebounds, blocks.
Points, rebounds, blocks, no assists. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. Uh,
He
Jeez.
can dime though, I'm not gonna lie. I remember watching the first game and
Yeah,
the offense wasn't there, but he's a willing passer for sure.
I think I have something like, oh man, do I think he's an over 20 player? That's the toughest call. I think he is. I think he's like a 20.5, 9, and 1.5 blocks. I think that is like maybe that's like pretty tough actually. Like that's obviously close to a double double on 1.5 blocks, but I think I can see that realistically. His
Mm.
usage is gonna be like pretty pretty up there.
Yeah, he'll have the usage to
Like
get 20 for sure.
yeah, exactly. And I
Uh,
think I think he's gonna have a better latter half of the season.
that's a good point. For me, I got him at 16, 8, and 2 blocks. I just think that
Uh-huh.
someone who's averaging 20 is doing it every single game. And I think with Wemby,
That is true.
I don't know if he'll be able to do that every single game when you're going up against the elite big men in this league. So I think 20 is probably the highest I'd go, but I feel more comfortable with a number like 16. Nothing crazy, still respectable, but I'm not I'm more so intrigued about how his defense is going to translate into the NBA game. Next, we got Scoop. I'll cap this one up. I think with Wemby, I think it's the most kind of boomer bust in terms of their rookie year. Scoot, though, I think Scoot's probably going to be the most consistent rookie out of everyone. I think a calm 15, 5, and 7 would be a great rookie season for him. And this is all assuming that Dame does eventually get traded. Because, I mean, I think it's just any day now. But when you look at Scoot, how he was going on in that first Summer League game, you could tell, like, yeah, any other draft, this guy would be one. And I think just, man, his game is so polished. He'll shoot it from the three. I like that he's not just going to, instantly try to go to something more comfortable. And then, again, his ability to get other guys on the floor involved. Man, I'm excited for when we go watch a Trailblazer game in the near future for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty. How you feel about Amen Thompson?
I mean, I just think like there's a lot of chefs in that kitchen right
Yeah,
now.
exactly my thinking.
And I don't know like how these rookies on the Rockets will ever do now. Because in my opinion, like anyone could just have a bucket, you know? And I think that's maybe the problem with that team. And I mean, it's good that they signed someone like Fred VanVleet, for example, to sort of mediate that. But even with that, like they just still have such a insanely like deep young core that I think he's probably going to play something around 25 minutes a game, if I had to guess. Maybe that's not an educated guess, but I just think they just have so many mouths to feed and so many people to develop. So I think he's going to have a good season, but he's not going to be in the contention that the other players like Scoot and Wemby are.
Yeah.
I think that's where, like, and I think it's just the situation in Houston specifically. But I think he's going to play to like the level he is. Like, I could see him averaging something like 12 or 14. Like, I don't know. I think like this team is just really hard to, they're really hard to predict.
Mm.
I mean, like, if I think like there just needs to be something that opens up for him to actually have potential to play more.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of opening up, I have written down here I like how you mentioned there's way too many chefs in that kitchen. I think they need to consolidate their assets. I think seeing what a KPJ and Jay Sean Tate package could fetch you on the open market, it's something I would look into. And you were definitely a lot more kinder than me. I think with just the fact that I don't see him starting, because I think the lineup would probably be Fred, Jalen Green, Cam, or Tari, whichever way you'd want to go there, Jabari Smith Jr., and then obviously Alperen Şengün. And I think with the fact that Amen is like he's more of a pure passer, so I don't know if you really throw him into your starting lineup if he's not able to at least be a threat from the three. And we'll see what Ime does, but I think Amen's definitely. I like how you worded it to where he's going to be really good his rookie year, but I don't know if he'll really be in the conversation with the Scoots and the Wembys and the Brandon Millers if you put him in there. But yeah, for me,
Eh,
I had 7, 5, and 5 for because you know
damn. That's fair. I think like I'm shooting for the stars honestly, because even with like sorry not to backtrack, but with Wemby, my number was more like 18, but I have high hopes for these guys
yeah,
always.
Wemby you just kind of got to shoot for the stars with him.
But yeah, 7, 5, and 5 sounds pretty be right.
Yeah, for sure. Last part of the because we kind of already answered a lot of the big questions I feel, and a lot of the ones I have written down we already touched on. But
Uh-huh.
we'll end it like here. If you had to put stock into any of the rookies outside of the top five, again sticking to Western Conference, what rookies are you rolling with?
I think you know my answer.
I feel like we,
Mostly be huh?
I feel like we're both thinking of the same guy,
You think so?
Keontae
All right, we'll
George.
see. Ah, shoot, yo. I mean, Keontae George is up there for me. I
Who
would
are
put
wait?
stock into him too. I think my stock, even though the situation is not ideal, like we just said, but I think my stock is going into Cam Whitmore, bro.
See,
I just,
I want to, but I just don't think he's gonna be able to.
yeah, he's not going to garner the minutes. That's the
Yeah.
problem. But his game, honestly,
Oh man.
is it's so young Kawhi-esque, and like
Yeah.
it's even echelons ahead in terms of like where he's at offensively, compared to Kawhi. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, Kawhi obviously
Well then,
developed
would
into a
it
player.
even really be like a Kawhi then?
Well, that's the thing. He's not. He's Cam Whitmore. Like,
True.
I don't know. I just think he's gonna have to like hang around for a bit before he can probably find a situation elsewhere. But if I were to buy stock into him, knowing that like that stock is gonna grow, like if I hold on to the stock, say for 3 years, 4 years, I think that stock is gonna pay dividends later.
Rolling Cam.
Just not this year. Let me say that.
Yeah, I think Cam. Do you think he cracks 10 points per game?
Oh fuck no. Like like
What do you
I
think
think
he'll average?
I mean maybe he averaged a cool 10 if he's lucky, but like I don't know, man. Like the thing is
I
like
think he'll average at least 9.
d- yeah, I mean Jalen Green just throws up so many shots on his own. Fred VanVleet is gonna want the ball. He's like the most paid player on
Dylan
that team.
Brooks, they got a lot of shot chuckers on that team, man.
Yeah, and like the thing is, like they don't got a rebounder for that. No one's gonna get a second chance point. Alperen Sengun is gonna get those second chance points if there's anybody. Like I don't know. I think like the thing is, yeah, I think they need to consolidate. But I think this season for them is just figuring out who is like who are we consolidating. Which even though
True.
honestly, Jay Sean Tate, KBJ, that makes sense. Like I think even outside of that, they have players they can consolidate from like probably even like between Cam Whitmore and like Amen Thompson after maybe 2 seasons. Like they're
Oh,
just.
ooh, dang. Okay.
'Cause I think they just have to like decide on their young core basically.
Yeah.
But all right. What was yeah. Who do you have? Who are you buying stock into?
I said it earlier, Keontae George. I
So,
think when you just look at situationally and what he showcased in summer league, I think it's very clear that he sort of looked like as this what's it gonna call as his Jordan Clarkson heir apparent, and I think his kind of game is perfect to learn off of a guy like Jordan Clarkson, to where a lot of your game is predicated on being a bucket, but when you're given the responsibility of being a playmaker and involving other people in the offense, I think he was really, it wasn't pretty sometimes, but he was like a willing passer. And I think that was something that was great to see. And I think just his bag, when he's able to get to his spots, he's definitely in the upper echelon of scoring when it comes to the guys coming into the league this year. And yeah, again, I think just being able to sit back for the year and learn from a guy like Jordan Clarkson is going to be integral to his kind of development for sure. So he's a guy I'm putting heavy stock in. Anybody else you got?
Honestly,
You know, we gotta diversify our portfolio.
if I were to like really just like put my money down on someone, and I think it was like someone I put my money on like since like this draft class was even talked about, it's still Scoot Henderson. I think he's gonna be the player out of this class personally.
True, true. But what
I,
about like
I
outside the top five though?
okay,
Like
sorry,
not the,
outside
yeah,
of the top five,
not the obvious guys.
right?
If you want to bring up,
Mm,
I like because I got the list in front of me. If you want to like
yeah,
look up the draft, because I can talk about another guy if you want to look up real quick.
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Let
for
me just
sure.
refresh.
Yeah, all good. While he does that, here's another guy I'm very high on, Leonard Miller. You know, I gotta have some Canadian bias here, but I think like how we mentioned that if Minnesota does a trade, I think a guy that's really gonna benefit from it is Leonard Miller, because you know I think when you're watching summer league, you're not looking for the guy who's getting the most points. You're not looking for the guy who's going crazy into his bag unless he's one of the top like drafted players. You're looking for guys that are showcasing tools and skills that are not just translatable to the league, but translatable to what you expect of him. And I think when you see Leonard Miller, he's grabbing rebounds, he's a willing defender, he's at least shooting the three. I think that's perfectly in line with what I would expect from him for his rookie year. And, you know, the length he has, the rawness there, it's kind of similar to Jaden McDaniels when he first got to Minnesota. And I think that wing duo is something I'm very, very high on. And that's going to be, I think, a great one to see. I'm not saying Leonard's going to be the best player from this class, maybe even top 10. I don't know. But I think he's going to be the kind of a guy who's able to be in the league for a long time for sure. Like with the tools he has, with the physical tools he has, it's going to be he's going to have a solid rookie season for sure. You got your guy?
I think I got two. Like now that
Word?
it's come to mind. I mean, outside top five, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think like the thing is this draft. I know it's been talked about a lot that like a lot of players could have just went higher if it was in the draft class it was. So I
Yeah.
think someone like a Jarris Walker, for example, again, like I think he's just like one of those guys who is like I don't know how to like compare his game to anyone at this given point,
He
but
kind of
I
I like sorry to cut you off, but the thing I imagine it's like if Bam played with like an actual center. Like the duo of Jarris Walker and Miles Turner is going to be nasty defensively.
yeah, I can see that. I think he's just like a huge solid guy.
Yeah.
And I think like those types of players, I think the thing is like I think those types of players either are kind of boomer busts. Like I think we like see these big guys that come into the league and they don't get the run or they get sorry. Yeah, they get the run or they don't. And like they kind of just flop after a season or they don't. I think with guards they have a lot of opportunity to do a lot. But yeah, I would say Jarris Walker is one of those guys. And I think for the shits, and also because I mean he was still a dog in high school. I think Amani Bates, like I still
Hey,
believe in,
I
I
respect
still believe
that.
the hype. I
I
mean,
think
like,
he's in the perfect situation.
yeah, he's got like I think he's gonna spend some time in the G League. But I think when it's all said and done, this dude's still a hooper, yo. and I think he might not ever get to be like that 32 point per game player he was in high school, but I think he's going to eventually come into like a very serviceable role in the NBA somewhere. So
I like
I
that.
think I think if you just know how to score, like you're already like somewhat there, you know?
Oh,
Like I think you just
100%.
yeah. And that's what like I mean has kind of been forgotten about him or like underlooked at this point
Yeah.
because he fell to the second round. But
And I think just to go back to the summer league, I think you saw him grow very quickly in that short period of time. I think you saw him be the guy that's going to chuck up a shot, try to take all the crazy, crazy shots. But as it started to wind up, especially in that final game, I think you saw him really, really play more of actual basketball than hooping, if that makes any
yeah.
sense at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if he'll really stick this first year. I think he'll get spot minutes for sure. He'll spend a lot of time in the G, but the Cavs got their new toys with Max Strus and Georges Niang. But yeah, I mean, if there's a guy that would really that I think everybody's rooting for in this class, Imani's definitely up there. And me and Ruben,
Yeah.
or if we do it on Saturday, whatever. When we talk about the Eastern Conference, he's a guy that we're definitely going to bring up again. But
Oh
yeah,
fuck, my bad. Yeah, we're
all
still
good,
talking about the
yeah,
West.
all
Yeah, I
good.
think I brought up Jarris Walker and Amani
Yeah,
Bates.
that's okay.
I think I forgot this was a Western Conference episode. I'm not gonna lie, but
All good,
yeah,
man. The rookies got you. Taylor Hendricks, I think, just to bring it back to the West, I think is another one of those perfect situational guys. Very versatile defensively. I think when you pair that with him and Walker Kessler, it's just going to make the game for Laurie to pour all offensively. I think it'll make it a lot easier for him for sure. And then Derek Lively the second is another. I think if it goes perfectly well, if the shooting translates, he's a guy that could be with Luca for like the rest of his career, damn near.
yeah. But Luke could also be one of those guys that just makes every player around him turn to dust. I'm just kidding.
You never know.
I'm a Luca hater. I think at this point, I just want to see Luca thrive, but I need to be proven wrong.
Proven wrong. He took the he's the Phoenix Suns' daddy.
Don't get me wrong. I think he is obviously still that guy, but like I think this season, last season, was just it's brought up a lot of question marks for me, as has everyone. And I think
Yeah.
I just don't want him to be the next James Harden, you know? I want to see more out of him.
Oh, you mean yeah? From that perspective, I feel that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Luca. Do you know? Do you know what the Chris Middleton cycle is?
Is it like is it referring to like when Giannis is not playing, he turns into the GOAT and when
Kind of.
like is
It,
that
it
what
it's like he goes from being very very good to being mediocre, and then damn near ass, and then back to like, oh, this dude's underrated, back to really good, and then back around to
yeah,
ass. I think we've seen Luca kind of on a similar cycle in that, you know, offensive juggernaut could will you to a win whichever way, but doesn't play defense. And then the second phase is he's still doing the offensive, still carrying the load offensively. But now it's not even that you need Luca to be a lockdown defender. I think you just need Luca to be a willing defender. I think that's the
yeah,
main thing. And then when you look at like what happened last year, I think it was a lot of change and a lot of inconsistency with that team. And I think being able to get that level of consistency with having a full training camp with Kyrie could definitely be beneficial. And seeing how they're going to gel together when it's like an actual, you have time to understand each other's games on a deeper level is going to be beneficial for sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm waiting, Luca. Just do something, man.
He got to a conference finals.
Yeah, yeah, you did. At one point, I don't know, man. I think like I think he just has been given like, I think to keep it short, I think he's just been given a certain title in the league. Like
Do you think
he's in
do
every
you think he's been given like a longer leash than most superstars?
not most. I think it's like comparable to like the leash of like a Joel Embiid,
Okay.
like I think people are being too easy on him, but I think it's because like he's done all this great stuff, but like I think the thing is like it's not completely his fault. I'm not saying that. I just think like if you are going to be that player in the league, I think you have to do what it takes to be that player in the league like season through season. So I just think fuck, I don't know what it is, man. Like I think people have like been saying like, oh man, I could go on a tangent. That's the problem. Like Jokic, for example, was not the number one player in the league by the voters this year. But like the thing is he got it done. And I just think like in order to be like considered in that like conversation of players, I think you have to get it done. Giannis got it done. I think Giannis is top three for me. I think honestly, like whoever's third, maybe Joel Embiid because he won MVP. But I don't think Luca is top three. And I think it's just because like for me it's just like I'm not a fan of like I don't know, man. We might just need to cut this part of the episode at this point.
It's
I might
okay.
just go. I just think I need to see something from Luca in order for me to like keep him in that conversation. Is what I'm saying.
Hmm. I I think it's just a lot of recency bias in terms of like
It
he
is,
didn't play a lick of defense for like this season it feels.
yeah,
But yeah, I get what you mean. You're holding all your light skinned brothers to a higher standard.
exactly. It's because I want to see him thrive, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna act like he's playing up to the level that he's like the guys are playing. Like there's only so many people you can call him, and I don't know if I can call him him.
Who if okay, last part of the episode. If you're should we do it where do you just want to say players you think are him or I'll throw some guys and you tell me if they're him?
Yeah, you can throw him if you want.
Okay. So Luca's not him.
No,
Devin Booker?
no, come on.
Jason Tatum?
Oh, that's tough. That's my own guy. But me personally, I still think he gets it done. Like I just think there's still obviously the steps they need to take, but I think he's still him.
Okay. Joel Embiid?
No, he's not him.
Kawhi Leonard? Is he still him?
Ah, I have to say he's not. I would say he has been, but he's not.
Okay. Did I say Paul George already?
No,
Paul George isn't him. Is SGA
maybe on
him?
the maybe in the podcast he is.
Damn.
uh, SGA, I would say not yet. Potential to be.
Okay. What
Yeah,
about what's the brother's name? Dame. Is Dame him?
that's tough. What do you think?
Hell yeah, I think Dame's still him. I mean, best
I mean,
season of his career this year.
yeah,
I'm still kind of I I forgot who I was talking about it with the other day. Might have been you, but I think the only reason he waited so long to request this trade, I think, was to get Jeremy Grant his bag. And I
it's
feel
true.
like if that's true, he's him. And I think whatever
Yeah,
team he goes to, he's going to be him. So I would still say he is. He's the guy. He's like, I think he's unequivocally, he's this generation's Charles Barkley. Maybe not to the same level because he's not an MVP or anything like that, but when you're just talking about generational talents who are able to, play, have a really long career, or like unequivocally a Hall of Famer. Dame is in that mold of like he's one of the best to ever do it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that has swayed me enough to say yeah, he's him.
Mhm.
And I think this is just based on like the players playing to like their standard and also like just being on a constant consistency with that standard as well.
Mhm.
Because I think like when I say Jason Tatum is him, I think it's because even though there's been some inconsistencies here and there, like he has still willed his team to be where they're at every season. Like if you look at like the appearances of the Boston Celtics, keep in mind better team than the Dallas Mavericks depth wise, but I still think Jason Tatum has showed up for that team, and I'm not saying Luca hasn't. It is a recency thing, but I think that's like because we hold him at even like the highest standard, like of the highest. Like if we're gonna hold him at that standard, then he has to like really show up.
He's got
And
to
I
play
just
some
think,
good D.
yeah, he's gotta be that defender. If we're gonna say he's this generation's LeBron James, like I better fucking see LeBron James, like, and I think that's just like it talks about him being that player, like, and then finishing the way they did. I need to see it this season before I can say again that Luca is him. Last season, I would say yes, Luca is him. Right
Oh,
now, I'm
so
like, eh.
the him pass you got to reapply every season.
I mean, yeah, I think you or like you just have to show up, like, and like, I think right now, like the Dallas Mavericks are just a question mark. Man, this is a long ass episode,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
okay.
I, I don't know.
Okay,
I'm Yeah,
I think that's a good place to end there. Yeah, the
it's
Dallas
a
Mav
debate. It's a debate. Yeah,
is a debate for sure. I think the Mavs are a
yeah,
big like. I think they have a what's the word? They have the biggest boom bust potential. I think. Like I
yeah,
think they could either be a solid top six team, or they could find themselves in the depths of NBA basketball again. You never know.
yeah.
But with that, this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. Christian, you got any last things to add?
I love you, Luca. Don't ever forget.
With that, stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.